Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Ooh, that needs to be fixed. It is round 3 of the Chennai Grand Masters for 2026. This video is coming out ever so slightly later than normal. That is because we just finished watching the Junior Springboks take on France in the Junior World Championships, Junior World Cup. And the Baby Boks have now gone back to back. That is, of course, after the main Springbok team defeated Wales earlier. So there we go, round 3. But we're back with Chennai Grand Masters. It has been a very interesting tournament, to say the least. Alireza Firouzja, whose game we're going to start with, is 2 out of 2. Then we're going to go on to the World Champion Gukesh in his matchup against Dmitry Andreikin. Then we'll go to Nodirbek Abdusattorov and his match against Pranesh M. And we're going to end with my pick of the round, Hans Niemann versus Arjun Erigaisi. But as I said, we're going to start with the tournament leader, Alireza. He's got the black pieces against Nihal. We have d4 and knight f6, knight f3, potentially going to play a London, or just trying to suss out what Alireza is going to do. Alireza plays the principal move d5. Now we get bishop to f4, so Nihal Sarin plays a London. And this is where you would expect me to just skip to the end of the game and it's a draw. But no, we got to look at this. So c5, the most principled way to play. e3, now knight to c6. h3, just preventing potentially the bishop coming out to g5, and things like of that nature. We get now e6, bishop to d3, bishop to d6, and now d takes c5, bishop takes c5, short castles, bishop d6, knight to c3, and e5. A very interesting decision here not to take this bishop. You don't want to drop back because that'll just ruin your structure, leave you with an isolated e-pawn. But to allow e5 is very interesting, because it looks like you're just losing, because after you move the bishop back, you get hit with a fork. So there obviously is some way to get out of this. Bishop g3 and now a6. You might say, wait, hang on, Matthew, you just told me this is a fork. It looks like it. You actually lose. By some miracle, you've got bishop takes. Bishop takes d6 is the key move to find. And then the main idea is takes here. And then there's this move knight b5, which causes immense problem. So if you ignore that, don't take the knight back, take the bishop back and say, hey, this is still a fork. Now I can take here because I've lured your queen forward and this is still hanging. So incredible tactics to find. So that is why bishop g3 is now met with a6. So there is no knight b5, but now we can get e4 in for white. Now d4, knight jumps to the center, castles, c3 takes, pawn takes, not knight takes, you don't want to go backwards, takes, bishop takes, which looks silly, it looks like you're sacrificing a piece, you kind of are, but you get the bishop back on d6, now bishop to c4, we swap the queens off, and after 18 moves, Nihal Sarin is up half an hour, Alireza had to negotiate all of that, pieces were just flying everywhere. You can see his time spent came around about here, right? So it was an hour here. He obviously thought about this whole position. You can see he spends 14 minutes on the move e5. He spends, another couple minutes here on castling. He spends a couple minutes taking, 2 minutes going here, takes, queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes took him 6 minutes because he drops the bishop on d6. Now this bishop coming out, look at this, 20 minutes to play bishop to c4. Trading the queens. He's now down to 20 minutes versus 51, but this is not an endgame he should lose. The pieces are very symmetrical as we begin. Even though it looks like black is encroaching, they're encroaching on nothing. White is fast enough to create counterplay, so even if this and so on, and there's this weakness. So basically all of this should cancel, and we should have a drawn endgame. Nihal up now, only 20 minutes on the clock after knight to g4. We get rook a6. Now check. King moves over. Bishop comes into h4. And we are looking to cause massive amounts of problems. The knight comes back. Now f3. So the one thing is, another reason this is a draw, opposite colored bishops. Obviously they favor the attacking side. So if you're able to create some really good attacking play, which, is not out of the question, but is really difficult to do. King now comes back, check, king comes forward, we bring the bishop back, knight looks to come in, we bring the bishop back, now b5, there's not much you can do. Those pawns should trade off. We trade off a set of rooks. The knight now grabs. It looks like you've blundered because it looks like rook b1 just wins. Sorry, rook b8. It's played, but now I can get back, defend my rook. We swap off the other pieces, and the more pieces that come off, the more likely this is going to be a draw. And I'm just going to click the forward arrow as these two players, these two super grandmasters, did not blunder anything and basically played a perfect game of chess as we swapped everything off. This was defended. We sacrificed the bishop simply because there is no longer enough material, and knight takes f7, and the game ended in a draw. So it was tense for a moment. Alireza had to find some accurate moves, but otherwise there's nothing. Gukesh yesterday, though, he lost to Alireza Firouzja in a game that was very back and forth. He had multiple chances to try and hold, but really struggled in time pressure. He begins with e4, e5, and we get a Scotch game, which is interesting. The Scotch is not played a lot at top level at all. So we get e takes d4, knight takes, now knight to f6, and the immediate knight takes c6. This is not as commonly played. I mean, knight takes c6 is the move that is most commonly played. 83% of the games. You can also play knight to c3. Because there's not always tactics and so on. But we get takes, now pawn takes, now e7, queen now pins it, now we play queen e2, the knight comes out, h4, d6, c4, knight goes back, takes, bishop e3, stopping the queen trade, d5, knight comes out, takes, now g3, so temporarily Gukesh sacrifices a pawn. He will be getting that back very quickly. Bishop g2, queen c7, and now short castles. Now these players haven't really thought. Gukesh is down 2 minutes. I don't know if he was just recalling some things or he left the board. I couldn't remember exactly. So he's down 3 minutes on the clock. They've played 15 moves of theory. Now bishop b4. Now bishop takes b6. And that is the first real think of the game. We can see 7 minutes spent. This was not on the toilet. Bishop takes b6. Gukesh is once again out of theory first, but he is getting this pawn back. Castles. The knight comes into e5. Now bishop to c5. We get takes. Queen takes g3. Look at that. You can't take because you would lose your king. I just ignore this knight because it can't be taken. I also ignore interposing or something like that. So we swap off some pawns like this. Now b4. And it looks like you've got a problem. Because if you take this, you lose your queen. If you try and hang on to your bishop, you're going to lose everything. So the queen needs to do something. We get bishop h3. Threatening mate. The only way to defend it is to play queen e4. And now we just trade off everything. And we get rook fc8. Where if you take my bishop, I take your knight. You take my bishop, I take your knight. And this should be a draw. Gukesh's king is mildly nervous. But Gukesh is winning. What? Hang on a minute. Gukesh is winning. No, he's not. That seems to be the end of the game. I don't know what to tell you. This is how the game apparently ends. It's that same thing we had yesterday. Don't know what happens. Rook fb1, I'm going to assume, was the last proper move, and then a draw was offered or something. Because there is no way in the world that this was played by a super grandmaster with 38 minutes on the clock. So I don't know what happened. I can't remember the end of the game. I was busy watching the rugby, so I did miss the end of some of these games. And so on. I was getting ready for the rugby and so on. And there was the Formula 1. There was lots of sport on today. There was chess, there was rugby, there was golf, tennis and so on. Well, no, not tennis this week. So I don't know what happened. We're going to move on. Nodirbek Abdusattorov versus Pranesh M. Pranesh M, he lost his first game with the white pieces, so he will look to come with something. He comes with something very similar. If I recall correctly, we had this like closed Sicilian that became an open Sicilian type thing in round 1. The queen gets hit very early on, and Magnus Carlsen has played like this, where he's got the queen out and lets it get hit and then comes back. And sometimes he like fianchettos, he goes queenside, and he plays very dynamically with this. We get g6, b3, now bishop h6, and you have to play f4. Because if you slide back, you're just going to lose this dark square bishop, and it's not great. So f4 is the move played. We get now knight to f6, now bishop to b2, short castles, long castles. opposite side castling. These two are going to have a fight. I just want to check. Am I bleeding? No, I'm good. I'm not bleeding. You guys will let me know in the comments if I was bleeding, right? Anyway, long castles. A5, A4. Knight B4. Just looking to create problems. King slides over to B1, gets out of this pin, which can be very problematic. But now we could always, at some point, create another pin, and so on and so forth. The queen comes out to B6, bishop to C4, bishop to G4, hits the rook. We interpose with knight to E2. You can see Pranesh was the first one out of theory. Only on move 13 does Nodirbek think for the first time, but he plays the most natural move in the Sicilian defense, simply bringing a rook to the C file. And yeah, he's just mounting the forces. There are huge amounts of problems, even though the engine says this is a level position. I will level with you. I would probably take black. I would hate this position as white. I don't know if I would play it perfectly as black. I wouldn't know all of the exact plans, but it is a very difficult position to play as white. So we get rook HE1. Now look at this, very thematic idea. Rook takes C4, sacrificing the rook for the bishop, but you bring the other rook, and now the white king is very exposed. We get queen to D4, offering a queen trade, and Nodirbek is happy to trade queens. He's down on time, he's down in exchange, but he continues to cause problems. And look at this move. Bishop takes knight, and how do you recapture? If rook takes, for example, then potentially bishop takes f4 would have come. And now there are massive complications. Knight d5 is probably the only move that really keeps anything level for white. You can play even knight b takes d5. And if this capture were to happen, you might say, oh, hang on, look at this. Yeah, bishop e5 is just dynamic. You swing out. But it's not a great position. And it's so easy for black to play. Black is much better. So for that reason, we ignore the bishop, by the way. We ignore the bishop. We play e5, which now hits the knight. So if you move your bishop out the way, you take here. I will probably take your knight. So what do? Do you address this threat or do you take the pawn? Well, in the game, bishop takes c4 was played. But that's an inaccuracy from Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Handing the knight over, takes, and now Pranesh M. He's better if he finds an accurate move here. He can move his knight, which seems natural because it's kind of out the way, but, you know, you are exposing this c2 pawn. Or he can slide his rook over and double. He decides to move his knight, which looks very natural. You are targeting two weaknesses, but as I said again, c2 is very weak. And it is very weak because we have bishop a2 check. Which looks redonkulous. And here is kind of where the game ends. Because king to a1, which looks really silly because it looks like you just blundered a fork. Knight takes c2 check. Looks like it just wins the house. But kind of you're getting away with it. I think because of this check. I think, if I go down the right line. Yeah, king h8. And Nodirbek is up 2 pawns, but there's enough play, probably. To kind of cover everything, you know, with like knight e8 and so on, and this discovery against the king is really bad, and there's like a forced draw here. So that's kind of the thing. So knight e4 is the move that was played, an inaccuracy. We have bishop takes, king moves over. Now the bishop goes back to e6. We take this, the king slides over to f8. King to b1, check, slides over, back, and they repeat moves and make a draw because, yeah, this is just kind of unstoppable force meets immovable object. You can't play this position without sacrificing a tremendous amount of material for either side. Black is next to being destroyed, white is next to being destroyed, and so mutually assured destruction, they make a draw. But this final game did not end in a draw, ladies and gentlemen. If you've made it this far, you know, let me know about it in the comments. If you're supporting Hans Niemann, let me know about it in the comments. He's playing Arjun Erigaisi, the madman. Arjun plays already. We have d5. We have c4. So transposition kind of into an English, potentially. We have e6. We have now g3. And what can happen here is Arjun can go for a Catalan. This is a neo-Catalan because he hasn't played the move d4. Magnus has played neo-Catalans. He's done him very well. We go d4. We are now in a Catalan opening. This is one of the most critical tests of the black position, of you as a chess player, of you as a person. Can you cope with the Catalan bishop? We get short castles. Now knight to c3, knight bd7, now knight e5. A very thematic idea, because you are opening up the Catalan bishop to just do its thing. I mean, the top game you'll see here is Daniel Dubois, who like gave the idea to Magnus Carlsen. So we have him to blame for a lot. Now c3. This is one of the more solid ways to approach. It's not as aggressive because you're trying to blunt this bishop as much as possible. There are like bishop crawl variations where you trade off and so on, or you like play aggressively. You like take this, try to hang on and play like rook b1, rook b8 rather, and so on. But short castles. Now knight takes, pawn takes. Knight goes back to d7, and how do you try to hang on to the pawn? You don't. You take, pawn takes, and now you play f4. You play it in this move order. You maintain potentially playing e4 in the future, and so on. But now you have given black some ideas of, potentially advancing the center and the queen side. They play f5. Obviously, they would love you to take en passant, but now you have a pass pawn. So what do? You play bishop to e3. And then knight comes to b6. It would love to plant itself on c4. Do you allow it? These are the types of questions you have to ask. Arjun Erigaisi is still in his preparation. Hans is not. Arjun plays queen to c2 after his first thing. He allows bishop e6, but, mainly, like, the idea you would be thinking of here is knight to c4. Potentially, he thought there was nothing after bishop to c1 or bishop to f2. So we get rook fd1. Now the knight comes to c4. His idea was bishop f2. And Hans Niemann looks like he's done nothing wrong. But it is already +1. Now queen to a5. b3 kicks the knight back. The knight hits the queen. Queen goes back. Now you have to play rook ac8. Or you don't have to. You've got other moves. You can, hang a piece if you wanted to. We get rook ac1. Now, rook fd8. And it looks like nothing can be done. Arjun was slightly better. It's more level now. The engine still always prefers white. I just imagine it thinks it's got better long-term prospects. It thinks maybe this pawn could be weak. It maybe doesn't think this is very strong. It probably thinks these pieces are not well coordinated. I don't know, some reason. It's pretty level. We have rook to d4. Now we have b5. And here again, I tell you, they've got two choices. Both of these look natural. You just continue to double up to apply pressure. One of them is better than the other. Rook cd1 is played. Queen d2 is better. Because let's say bishop to b4. Now, because you look like you've just walked into a pin, you can play queen b2 back. And now if bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, queen takes c3, rook takes c3, it thinks that c5, rook d1, even though you've got kickback, it thinks this is a better progression for white. Rook cd1, now b4 is played. The knight gets kicked, and Hans here is actually slightly better. If he plays the right retreating move, which one is correct? You already guessed that he played the wrong one, which is now a mistake. It looks so natural because you retreat and you hit a rook. What could be more natural? But the rook moves. And now d4 is played. Bishop takes, and now the bishop, you get hit again. Bishop drops back, and now c4. Hans went for dynamics. He looked to hit the rook and to kind of start creating things. Because he's like, I'm not scared of this Catalan bishop that, by the way, now sees the entire board. And you trade it. What? Hang on. What? The rook is hanging. Obviously, you wouldn't do that now because this comes with check and you lose. But what? Why would you trade that bishop? Because the position no longer demands that you need it. You no longer demand that you need it. Black has committed everything here. Arjun is up a pawn. The knight moves, which looks like it hangs the queen. By the way, it looks like he just straight up hung a queen. I imagine his idea was this. And that he would be quite happy, particularly because of a move like c3 in this position, which would just trap the queen. The queen's got nowhere to go. If it goes to the back rank, it gets taken. If it goes here, it gets taken. Obviously, if it just hangs around, it's going to get taken. So you can just kind of trap the queen, which is really funny. And you can see here, it still thinks it's level because you've got queen c1, which would force the rook off. And then, for example, let's select rook here so that you don't lose this. things like king f3, and it still thinks it's level. But it's really fun that you can kind of get your queen trapped in the most roundabout way. So, anyway, we have knight to a3. We do get this queen swap variation, king to f2 with the slight change. Now c3, queen d1. All of this line is the same. You got your queen trapped, but in this slight difference in the variation, white is better. The slight difference. Rook to c7. Now e4 is played. I told you that break could be important. Black has two choices. Hans Niemann chooses wrong again. It's really difficult, but he's got 17 minutes on the clock, and you've got to decide between moving your knight, which I don't know what this achieves exactly. Obviously, it improves the knight, but you would think just take this. You would think just take this pawn. There's no reason it should take you, but he elects to go with this. I would imagine he thought he could just go win it back, but he can't. And check, and the king comes up, and yeah, okay, it looks like black has activated all of its pieces, and it looks really scary, but you really haven't. And e6, and check, okay, I move. And now do you give a check, or do you cut off everything on the first rank? You give a check. But I just go back. Now where does your rook go? Does it go here, trying to hide pawns? Allow my rook into the game, allow this pawn to try and promote? You go that way? I go this way. Now what do? How do you try and defend this position? Do you play, for example, knight to here to try and get out and get back and defend? Do you bring your bishop back to defend? Well, it's actually better to bring your bishop back to defend because now g5, now your bishop can't get back to defend. And so your king has to come. But now my knight's getting in, and it's going to give a check. And once again, how do you defend this position? Do you go for counterplay? And do you try and squeeze this through and get the knight in and remove it? Do you try and go for your own pawn counterplay? Do you take this with check and force the king to move and try and disturb the coordination? c2, inaccuracy, now check. King comes over, check. And now knight to b7 is game over. Arjun Erigaisi defeats Hans Niemann simply because this check will ruin your game. You'll go here, you'll give check again, this pawn will promote, and that will be game over. And so Hans Niemann goes down to Arjun Erigaisi. Arjun now moves closer to the leader, Alireza Firouzja. He's still a point behind because I believe Alireza is on 2.5. Arjun is on 2. So half a point behind, 1 win behind. And so on. And that is how everything stands after 3 rounds at the Chennai Grand Masters for 2026, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know how you spent this day, Mandela Day around the world. Let me know how you spent your 67 minutes in the comments down below.